What's up guys, my name is Brandon and Apple announced iOS 12 today, and in this video we're going to be covering some of the most notable features and also how to get it for free without a paid developer account. Now I will also be making a separate video to talk about some of the hidden features that weren't talked about at the event in iOS 12, so make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss that video. Alright, so let's not waste any more time, let's go ahead and get straight into it. And let's start off with exactly what Apple started off with in the keynote, and that is performance. So I definitely noticed right away that the performance has been improved with iOS 12. Now it's going to be a little bit more noticeable on some of the older devices like the 5S and the 6. And yes, iOS 12 is compatible with the iPhone 5S as rumored. And I say this because at the keynote, an iPhone 6 was shown on stage launching applications 40% faster, loading up the system keyboard 50% faster, and opening the camera 70% faster than iOS 11. That is huge. And I actually live streamed the entire event along with my reaction to everything. And one thing I said in the live stream is that this is the type of performance improvements that you see with like new phones, like going from the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8, from the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 10. But to have that with just a software update is massive. Now, not only do the older devices thrive in performance with iOS 12, but my iPhone 8 Plus here is, like I said, noticeably smoother and more fluid than iOS 11.4.1, which is the latest version of iOS, and that is what I updated from before installing iOS 12. I noticed a big difference in the app switcher, how quick the app switcher is, the control center, how quick and fluid it is. When I 3D touch, 3D touching seems a lot more just reactive and more fluid than it was in iOS 11. And I'm definitely not falling for the placebo effect here. It definitely does feel faster. And I also did a Geekbench test. I know these aren't really important in day-to-day usage. You know, you can't really tell how fast the phone is from Geekbench, but you can see that the numbers here are pretty impressive on iOS 12. And as you may have noticed, there is a new wallpaper here for iOS 12, and I will have this link down in the description below in case you didn't want to update to iOS 12 just yet, but you do really like this wallpaper. I will have the full resolution link down in the description below. Now, one of my favorite new features introduced with iOS 12 is grouped notifications, and this is something jailbroken users have had for a while now, but it's awesome to see it natively included in iOS. So if we go ahead and swipe down here to view our notifications, you can see that we have group notifications right here for Bleacher Report and also for Nest. So you can see there's kind of like an effect on them where you can see multiple bubbles behind the notification there. And you can see right there, it says 2 more. For Nest, it shows 20 more. And if you go ahead and click on that on Nest, you can see that it shows up all the notifications right there. You can go ahead and click that again to show less, do it again to show more. You can also swipe over to the right or to the left, and you can click manage, view, and you can clear all. So if we click on manage, you'll notice we have some new options here. So we have deliver quietly, we have turn off, and it says down here, quiet notifications will appear in the notification center and badge the app icon, but will not appear on the lock screen, preset banners, or play a sound. And then we have these settings right here as well. So we can go straight to the settings, the notification settings for whatever application that is. And you can see the icons here are new as well for the alerts. And of course, there is a clear all button right there. So you could clear all those notifications. So that is group notifications. That is one of my favorite features by far here in iOS 12. And speaking of grouping things, group FaceTime is also included in iOS 12. This is another feature that we've been waiting on for a long time, but it's finally here. So now with group FaceTime, you can FaceTime with up to 32 different people. And this is very similar to Google Hangouts because basically inside of the group FaceTime, you'll see that there's different blocks and they get bigger with sound. Basically the blocks get bigger with sound, like the person that's talking the loudest will have a bubble showing up bigger because it's smart and it knows, you know, who's talking and who to show the bigger screen of. And it's also really cool because you can do group FaceTime with a click of a button in a group chat. So say you have a group chat with like 5-6 different people and you can just click on one button and start a group chat with everybody in that group chat, or a group FaceTime, sorry, with everybody in that group chat, and anybody can join in and leave whenever they want to. It's really, really cool. And I can see a lot of people ditching Skype and Google Hangouts for this new group FaceTime feature in iOS 12. Now, one thing you can do while on FaceTime in iOS 12 is use a Mimo G, which is something else new with iOS 12. So Mimo G is basically just an emoji of yourself, which is very similar to something like Bitmoji, which you see on Snapchat. You can basically just set your skin tone, you know, you can add sunglasses, hats, and hair and different things like that. And there's also now tongue detection with Animoji and Memojis for whatever that's worth to you. Apple just really seems to love the Animoji and the Memojis, and I guess they're a lot more popular than what I think because I don't really use them and I don't really know anybody that uses them, but apparently they're pretty popular if Apple keeps on pushing them. Anyways, moving on to a more practical feature, Apple also unveiled a new app called Measure with iOS 12. And you can see the app icon right there if you go and click on that. And this is now a stock application with iOS 12, and it's going to allow you to measure objects using AR. So this is super useful unless you just always carry around a measuring tape everywhere you go, which I doubt any of you do unless you're like a construction worker or something. You can see I can start measuring something. So if I just wanted to measure the length of this, maybe let's move this right here. So if I want to measure the length of the stand holding my iMac up, we can see I can measure that. It's about 8 inches. If I go and click on that, you can see it shows the approximate length in centimeters and inches right there, and you can copy that if you want. You also have the clear button right here. You can go and clear that out. If I wanted to measure the height of the HomePod, I can do it like so, about right there. Oops, it's stuck to the top of the iMac. It's still a little bit, it's not the greatest right now. So it's about 9 inches tall. So you can see I can easily measure it right there, which is really, really cool. We also have a level right here, which shows I'm off by about 1, but it's pretty cool that you do have a level right there. So this is actually a really cool and practical feature that I can see myself using, you know, sometimes when I need to measure something really quickly without having to go and get a tape measure, or if I just don't have a tape measure at all. The Photos application also got a massive update in iOS 12. So you can see right here, I'm on a new tab called For You, and this will show memories and basically suggest filters and effects that you may want to apply to all the pictures in here. And of course, it does automatically populate all of this, so you don't even have to do anything. And if you go to the album section, you can see you can scroll sideways now instead of just up and down, which is really cool. You have shared albums, people and places, and you also have this section right here that shows the media types. It shows how many of everything you have right here. And then your other albums are down here, hidden, recently deleted. It's just a lot more clean than it was in iOS 11. And perhaps the coolest new feature with Photos is that it will now make sharing suggestions with friends. So basically, when you send pictures to friends, they're going to get prompted to share back their own pictures or videos from the same event. So this is pretty cool, and I actually could have used this when I was just in St. Croix a couple weeks back. And this is one of those features that you're going to just have to use on your own before you realize how useful and how awesome it actually is. And you can see down here in Photos, we also now have a search tab, and you can see it'll search people, places, and categories. So you can see categories that shows cat, animal, nightclub, dog. It actually categorizes all my photos. It goes through and basically just analyzes them and figures out what it is, which is really, really cool. And of course, you can search for photos, people, places, and events as well. Now, if we go into settings, there's a new feature called screen time, which is really, really awesome. So you can see screen time right there. And this is going to break down how much time you're actually spending on your device and using individual applications. So you can see right here, I've had an hour and 42 minutes of screen time, 14 minutes in settings, 10 minutes productivity, Geekbench 7 minutes, and 25 other minutes. And you can see you have all these things right here. So downtime, schedule time away from the screen. So basically you could just have certain apps allowed during this time, which is pretty cool. App limits, so you can add a limit to an application, like a certain amount of time that you can be in an application. You have applications that are basically whitelisted, and then you also have content and privacy restrictions to block inappropriate content. And of course you can set a passcode for this and also set up screen time for family sharing. And if you go ahead and click on this right here, you can see a much better breakdown right here as well. So it'll show your longest session, it'll show your most used applications, how often you pick up your device, which is really cool. This is one of my favorite features of screen time. It'll show you when you have the most pickups and when you pick up your phone. So it shows I pick up my phone once every 13 minutes and has a chart to break down when you actually pick up your phone, which is really, really cool. And this can actually be pretty eye-opening for some of you that are addicted to social media and things like that. And it shows right here, it shows you what gives you the most notifications as well. So this is just an awesome feature. Again, one of my favorite features by far in iOS 12. Now Siri also got major improvements, mainly with the help of an app called Shortcuts. Now this app, which is actually in settings right now, the actual standalone app isn't out yet, but it is in settings. If we go to Siri and search, you can see we have shortcuts right here. And basically it lets you put together multiple actions that can be triggered by a custom Siri request. So it's very similar to workflow, you know, something like workflow or IFTT, if this then that, if you're familiar with it. And it's really, really cool. And I'll definitely be making a video with more details on this once the actual application gets released. The stocks application got a complete redesign. It looks a lot more clean than it did in iOS 11. You can see that if we go and click on one of the stocks, it shows a much better looking chart right here. And you can see stories and things like that. You can see the scroller up at the top. We also have news built in now to the stocks application, which is really useful if you're into stocks. Overall, it just looks a lot better than it did in iOS 11. Voice Memos also has a new app icon right there, and it also has a completely new redesign in iOS 12. So you can see it looks a lot cleaner in iOS 12 than it did in iOS 11. Voice Memos are also coming to iPad and iCloud syncing as well. So those are most of the notable new features included with iOS 12. Lots of performance improvements, but also some much needed improvements to things like notifications, FaceTime, photos, and more. Now, if you want to install iOS 12 without a developer profile or a computer completely free, I'll leave a link down below for exactly how to do that. Also, there are a ton more features included with iOS 12, which I will be making a separate video on later on this week, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for a lot more iOS 12 content. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.